Hello ladies, gents and primordial serpents! Dark Souls can be a difficult game to understand at first sight, so here's a bit of an introduction to its mechanics just to cut down on that time you spend confused, so that you may spend more time dying atrociously. Before we get into that, I must warn you that the game is close to unplayable on PC without a few mods to fix it. Their DSfix, which drastically improves visuals and unlocks the dreadful framerate, and DSmfix, which is only necessary if you plan to use keyboard and mouse. The mods are very simple to install, just follow the instructions on their respective websites, which I've linked below. If you have any questions about them, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments. Now that that is out of the way, let's get into the game itself. You play as an undead, the so-called chosen undead, in fact. You see, in the world of Dark Souls, more and more humans have become afflicted by the dark sign. No one knows why, but those marked with the dark sign, well, they keep coming back after dying. Regarding it as an abomination, the church or the authorities round up the undead and ship them off to the undead asylums, where they're left to rot and go hollow. Going hollow for an undead means to lose themselves and become little more than a mindless beast. It happens after dying too many times, losing a sense of purpose, losing the sense of self, losing hope. And this is the beautiful metaphor at the heart of Dark Souls, because the process mirrors the player's experience. The chosen undead can die 1,000 times, 2,000 times without losing him or herself. But when you walk away, when you put down the controller or let go of that keyboard and say, I can't take it anymore, when you give up and lose your drive and leave the game behind, that's when the chosen undead goes hollow.
Don't get yourself killed. Neither of us want to see you go hollow.
So you see, Dark Souls isn't difficult for its own sake, though there's probably some of that as well. Dark Souls is difficult because that's the only way this story can be experienced. And so you start in your dank cell, rotting away. But you have an unknown friend in the outside that thinks maybe you don't deserve to go out like this. And so your jail cell opens and your journey truly begins. How far you get from here is up to you. So let's cover the game mechanics with which you'll have to be familiar in order to progress through the bleak realm of Lordran. Souls are both the currency and the experience points of Dark Souls. You spend them to level up as well as buy and upgrade equipment. Whenever you die, you'll drop a bloodstain that contains all the souls you were carrying. If you die a second time without retrieving them, they will be lost for good. The bonfires are the checkpoints of the game. Your progress is constantly saved, all your decisions are final, and if you quit you will reappear exactly where you were at, but if you die, you'll return to the last bonfire you rested at. Here you can access your stash once you buy it, and a lot of character progression options once you unlock them. Use the bonfires wisely, as anytime you rest there, every non-boss enemy will respawn. You will quickly learn to desperately seek these islands of solace in an otherwise unforgiving world. So you've gathered a bunch of souls and you want to level up your character, but where do you put those points? You can't undo your choices, and each point you allocate makes the next one more expensive, so it's not a trivial decision. As a rule of thumb, if you don't feel you need more health or stamina, you'll be boosting the stats that allow you to wield your weapon of choice more effectively. Let's go down your list of options. Vitality affects your health total. You don't need to put points here, but you'll want to, especially if it's your first playthrough. It will save you a lot of deaths and frustration. Maybe place 1 point here for each free you place elsewhere. You'll get a feel of how much vitality you want, depending on how much damage you're taking. Attunement determines how many spells you can equip at one time. If you don't plan on being a spellcaster, you can ignore it. If there's a single spell you want to use, simply put points in here until you have the attunement slots necessary to wield it. Clearly, the more spells you can attune at any one time, the more versatile and resourceful a spellcaster you'll be. Endurance gives you stamina, weight capacity, and bleed resistance. It's the most important stat for characters that want to focus on avoiding damage instead of tanking it, since stamina determines how far you can run, roll, and block without waiting to refill. More weight capacity means you can equip more armor and heavier weapons without becoming encumbered, allowing you to be more nimble in battle. The thresholds to watch for are 25% load capacity and 50% load capacity. If you don't care about speed, you can fat roll your way to victory. If in doubt, you can't really go wrong placing points in endurance, at least until you hit 40. You'll stop gaining stamina from further investments after that. Strength and dexterity are the damage stats for physical weapons. Each weapon and shield has strength and or dexterity requirements to be met and a certain rate at which they scale with each stat. Pump strength if you like big ponderous heavy hitters like great swords and clubs, or dexterity if you like faster weapons that require more finesse to wield, like katanas, scythes and bows. Or both at the same time for a balanced build, as there are weapons in the game that benefit from them equally. Resistance is a pointless stat that you can safely ignore. You get resistance in any way every time you level up, and you can get it through equipment, and the diminishing returns on stats means that anything you invest here will be wasted once your level is high enough. Intelligence is a stat to boost for sorceress as it increases the damage your spells cause. It allows you to use better catalysts and do more damage with magical weapons. Faith is the equivalent stat for miracles and divine weapons. Now Humanity. Humanity is a completely different stat that you can't level up, so I'm not sure why it's in this menu, because it confused the crap out of me when I started. In any case, Humanity boosts your item drop rate and curse resistance. It has big diminishing returns past 10, so it won't ever be worth increasing further. In fact, going from 0 to 1 Humanity is almost as much as a buff for you than going from 1 to 10. You gain soft Humanity by killing enemies in an area which still has an undefeated boss, by consuming hard Humanity that you loot from various sources, by defeating other players in PvP, and by killing NPCs, which is not recommended. You can use Humanity to kindle Bonfires, which gives you more healing charges from that particular fire, and reversing your Hollow status, which enables online play as well as a few special interactions with NPCs. This is the stuff you use if you don't want to look like a disgusting rotten corpse. Do bear in mind that you can lose your soft Humanity in exactly the same way you lose your souls count, so I wouldn't worry too much about it on your first playthrough, though it's nice to have. When appraising your weapons, you will most likely look at 4 areas: damage, scale ratings, requirements, and weight. Scale ratings from worst to best can be E, D, C, B, A, and S. The better the rating, the more the particular stat will affect the weapon's damage. When appraising shields, you want to look at the block and stability percentages and weight. Block percentage is how much incoming damage is absorbed by the shield, while the higher the stability, the less stamina gets used up when you block. For armor, it's all about the damage reduction and poise versus its weight. The higher your poise, the more damage you can take before you are staggered. You can upgrade almost every piece of equipment with the help of the blacksmiths scattered throughout the land. Upgrading weapons not only increases their damage, but also how well they scale with their pertinent stat. There are 3 types of magic in the game. Pyromancy, which is the most aggressive and needs you to equip a flame in your hand. Miracle casting, which is the most defensive and requires a talisman. And sorcery, which is the middle of the road kind of sort of and requires a catalyst. Still a lot of damage, but also has defensive capabilities. It's very versatile. You equip these spells in your inventory by attuning them at the bonfires. It's worth noting that Pyromancy isn't tied to any stat. To do more damage, you upgrade the flame itself with the help of NPCs that you'll find in your travels. When running around the world, you'll find NPCs that offer you to join their covenant. These are the factions of Dark Souls, and though not all of them, they are mostly geared toward online play. All I'll tell you about them is to feel free to experiment and say yes and see what happens, because a couple hours into the game you'll find someone that will let you leave covenants at will. Also, this NPC will be able to reset the NPC's aggressiveness toward you for a price, of course. Alright, that's most of the basics. You should now be equipped to decide how to become more powerful in a way befitting your playstyle. I didn't cover any of the combat because that's something that is a lot more fun to figure out on your own, and it's not something that you have to know, and it's very intuitive to figure out the combat and experimenting what works for you and what doesn't. So go out and get yourself killed, but don't you dare go hollow. Until next we meet, I bid you farewell.